Lord, I pray for the words that I speak, for this moment in time. I hand it over to you, that you will shape these words and you will touch each of us through this moment, bringing to our hearts what it is you know we need this day. Lord, I pray this to you, my rock and my redeemer. Amen. Paul wrote lots and lots of letters to the early church. And sometimes there are letters that are a little bit scolding because people have gotten a little lost. Sometimes they're encouraging, saying, yes, you're doing a good job, keep it up. But this letter to the people of Philippi, this letter is a letter of joy. It is one where he is just saying over and over how much joy he has for these people, for what they've discovered, for their relationship with God. Over and over, he says things like, rejoice in the Lord always. And again, I say, rejoice. In fact, in the middle of this letter, he incorporates what probably was a hymn that the early church knew. And it includes that phrase that we have incorporated in a lot of our own songs, where we say, every knee will bow and every tongue will confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. He is filled with such joy. Joy for his relationship with God that he is seeing replicated in these people in Philippi who are knowing God and giving their life to God and serving God in all sorts of ways. There is joy. And as we come to the end of this letter he writes, he adds this thing where he says, I don't need anything from you right now. The people of Philippi have supported him in the past, and he's saying, that's not what this is about. I have learned this secret, the secret to be content, because I've had plenty. And Paul certainly, when he was a Pharisee and was lifted up and exalted in the leadership of the church, he had position, he had power, he had plenty, and he has known what it is to have nothing, to be imprisoned and to be literally destitute. He has seen both of those things, and he has learned the secret to be content. It's what this whole letter is building up to. It's what all this talk of joy is. His contentment is knowing God. It's having that joy, that deep inner knowledge that God is with you. Joy is not the superficial happiness that is fleeting, but it's embedded within your very spirit. It allows you to be content in any moment if you have that. Now, as I look around and I see all these coats and scarves and stuff, I'm thinking, in fact, I've been thinking this all week as I've been writing scriptures and having conversations with people. I keep coming up with a woman's name that has become a verb in our culture. Everybody needs to be Marie Kondoing their coat closet right now. And you know what that means, right? I see a couple heads. If you don't know, I don't know where you've been for the last several years. Ever since about 2015, this Japanese woman has become a international celebrity by emphasizing simplicity. She will talk about how important it is to organize your life and to simplify, to declutter your life. And people resonate. We all recognize we have stuff. And when we have stuff, sometimes the stuff has us. And we get kind of caught up into that. So she kind of burst onto this scene and taught us that it's okay to not have quite as much stuff. And she has a whole way to do it. If you've read any of her books, you know what it is. She doesn't go room by room. She breaks it down to simple, small, manageable steps. She'll say, gather up all your shoes. And if you're like me and you love shoes, that's going to be quite a pile. Gather them up and then handle each pair and look at them. Does it spark joy? If it doesn't, give it away. Maybe it will for someone else. But if it does, hang on to it. And don't just put it back in your closet. Find a place where you will see it It will remind you, not someplace where you'll forget about it again, but someplace that kind of honors the joy that it sparks within you. This is a really good habit, to go through your stuff and say, wow, this is amazing. I'd forgotten I had it, but now that I see it, I really want to hang on to it. I'm not going to shove it back in a corner. I'm going to put it someplace where I see it and I will use it. Or, oh my goodness, do I really have 5 pairs of black shoes? Do I really need 5 pairs of black? Well, I might. No, I really don't need 5 pairs of black shoes. I can get rid of some of them. It's a cleansing, almost a spiritual discipline, which makes sense. It kind of comes out of her own faith tradition, which is Shinto, which is a very simple, nature-driven way of being in the world. All of that is good, but there's something that got lost in translation, or maybe overemphasized. Because the word in her original book, which was written in Japanese and got translated to English and sparked this whole enthusiasm for simplifying, the word she uses that got translated as sparks joy, well, that's not what it meant. It didn't talk about sparking joy, that deep-seated thing that Paul is lifting up. It meant what causes your heart to flutter, to beat a little faster. Well, that is different. That's like that excitement you get when you see something really cool, the new shiny sparkly thing. It's not what will lead to contentment. Victor Hugo has a definition of joy where he says, joy is founded in the knowledge someone loves you. That is joy. It doesn't come from things or situations. It comes from love. In 2007, I am sure most of you, if not all of you, remember Hurricane Katrina. And you remember the images that we all saw on the news of the Ninth Ward completely decimated. And as the waters receded, you would see just trees ripped out and homes off their foundation and just a city destroyed. New Orleans became a site for multiple mission experiences. All the major denominations, some non-denominations, basic Red Cross and Salvation Army, and all sorts of people wanting to do good, wanting to make a difference, wanting to help out their brothers and sisters who were suffering so much right now. This was a site for them to go to do good work. And it became a very significant destination for many college-age mission trips. They would head down over spring break. Instead of going down to Florida to do what we parents don't want to think about our students doing, they would go to New Orleans to help with hurricane relief. This one particular group went down to the Ninth Ward. And when they first got there, what struck them was the silence. This city that had been brimming with laughter and cars and people and jazz was silent. They had been assigned one particular home, and as part of the arrangement, the homeowner has to be present when they're there working. And so they got to the home, and they're looking around, and there are a few homes that people have started cleaning out already. There's piles of stuff on the side of the curb, and there are refrigerators lined up like silent sentinels along the side of the street, all taped or roped shut, waiting to be hauled off. And, of course, they are equipped with masks, much as we are today, for a slightly different purpose. Yes, to protect them from the viruses or bacteria, mold that was going on, but also to protect somewhat from the smell, because that was the other thing, the silence and the smell. This was the spring. This city had been shut down since August in New Orleans. The heat and the humidity and all the wet walls and furniture and clothing and the food, there was a smell. But this is a group of college students, and they have energy, and they are excited, and they are thrilled to be there, and they bring their own enthusiasm. And they come, and they are at the house, and they meet the owner, a lovely woman in her early 60s, sitting in one of those folding lawn chairs with the mesh weave in the driveway. She's watching, and she greets them, and they introduce themselves, and then they take all this energy and they go into the house and they start pulling out things, furniture and knickknacks and picture frames and pillows that had been decorative pillows, and they start making their own pile on the side of the road. And they're talking, and they have energy, and they're excited. And once in a while, one of them might need to take a break, and they would wander over to visit with the homeowner. And they would chat, little things. How are you? Where are you staying now? Do you have family around? Have you heard from your neighbors? Just little stuff. But then they became aware, as they were chatting, that she would pause for a moment every time someone came out the front door and down the sidewalk to the street carrying who knows what. She would pause. And she would watch as they would take a piece of her life and drop it on the side of the road. Soon, the team became aware, and they would see her as they were going back and forth, just sitting there with a tear rolling down her cheek. And instead of coming out, laughing and telling jokes and tossing things onto the pile, they began to carry them out with some reverence. The vases, the picture frames that still had barely visible photographs inside of them. They were placed now in this mountain of testimony to a life once lived. The water in this area had been 13 feet high. It reached into the second floor, and they gradually cleared out all the stuff from the first floor. Then they got to the second floor, and in the back bedroom, there was a grandfather clock, about 6 feet tall. You could tell it was an old and treasured clock, but it had been standing in water for a time and was no longer salvageable. But this time, when it was removed from the house, these strong young college men carried it out almost as if they were pallbearers. And they took it out of the house, down those narrow stairs, through the front door, down the sidewalk, and they stood it up next to the pile that they had removed. And following them came a young woman. Hanging on the side of the grandfather's clock had been a wedding dress, and she's carrying it in her arms. The train and the hem of the dress are just black with mold. But she can see it was a treasure. She pauses, and then instead of going straight to the pile, she walks over to the woman sitting in her little folding lawn chair. And the woman reaches out and touches the sleeve. She says, "That was my mama's dress. I was married in it. My daughter, she was married in it. We were saving it so her little girl could be married in it. But it has to go now." And so it's carried over to the pile, and it's laid on top. Finally, all the things are removed from the house, and now the team has the task of taking down the drywall and hauling out the insulation. And they work hard that week until the house is left as an empty shell. And on their final day, they are standing in what used to be the heart of a family, the living room. And the woman has joined them, and they're in a circle, and the bare studs of the wall are exposed, and the light coming in the window has the dust motes floating through it. And they formed a circle, and they're sharing a little bit about their experience of being there. And then it's the woman's turn, and she offers up a prayer. And in her prayer, she says, God, at first, I couldn't see past the ruin. All my things, all my treasures, all my family history, all the stories were just laying in a moldy mess on the floors. I couldn't see past that. But then, when these people came and cleaned it out, now I look around and all I see is hope. Paul says, I have learned how to be content. I have had plenty and I have had nothing. But I have learned this, that in the midst of it all, despite the situation, in an empty room, in a completely shell of a house, we can know that we are loved because God is with us. I have learned this, Paul writes, and I am content. Rejoice. Rejoice in the Lord. And again I say, rejoice in the simplicity of the fact you are loved. And all the people say, amen.